Hey guys, tonight we delve into something a little different, a little darker. We leaving the well-lit streets behind and venturing into the echoing silence of Tokyo's forgotten places, specifically its abandoned hospitals. Imagine vast buildings, once centers of healing and hope, now surrendered to dust, decay, and, well, whatever lingers when the living have long departed. Picture peeling paint like sunburnt skin, equipment draped in ghostly white sheets of settled grime, and corridors stretching into oppressive darkness. It's the kind of place where every creak sounds like a footstep, every shadow seems to watch. You probably won't survive this. Just kidding, mostly. It's just a story, right? But a deliciously creepy one. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It helps more than you know. Also, pop your location and local time in the comments below. Always fascinating to see where everyone is tuning in from. Might make you feel a bit less alone in the dark. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The taxi drops you off a few blocks away. Sensible, really. No driver wants to linger near that place, especially not as dusk bleeds purple and orange across the Tokyo sky, painting the clouds in hues that seem just a little too bruised. You pay the fare, the driver gives you a look, pity, concern, or maybe just wondering if you're completely nuts, and speeds off, leaving you in the sudden, heavy quiet of this forgotten neighborhood fringe. The air here feels different, thicker, cooler, despite the lingering humidity of the day. It carries the scent of damp concrete, overgrown weeds, and something else. Something metallic and faintly sweet, like old blood or rusted machinery. You pull your jacket tighter. A flimsy shield against the encroaching chill and the undeniable sense of unease settling in your stomach like cold stones. You start walking. The streetlights flicker intermittently, casting long, dancing shadows that twist familiar shapes into monstrous forms. Ahead, silhouetted against the dying light, looms your destination. The Okatsu General Hospital, or what's left of it. It's a behemoth, a brutalist concrete structure from the post-war boom, probably around the mid-1950s when Tokyo was rebuilding itself with frantic energy. That era saw a massive expansion in public health infrastructure, a testament to Japan's resilience. This hospital would have been state-of-the-art once, a symbol of progress. Now it's a monument to obsolescence, a concrete carcass picked clean by time and neglect. The main gate is chained, naturally, but the adjacent wall has conveniently crumbled in one section, offering an unofficial entrance. Classic urban exploration starter pack. You pause, listening. The city hum is distant here, muffled. Closer sounds dominate. The rustle of wind through tenacious weeds reclaiming the pavement cracks. The distant bark of a dog, the scuttling of unseen creatures in the undergrowth that presses right up against the hospital's foundations. Is that a rat? Or just your imagination playing tricks already? Let's go with rat. Definitely a rat. A big, possibly mutated, definitely not ghostly rat. See? Nothing to worry about. You hoist yourself over the broken wall, landing with a soft thud on damp earth inside the hospital grounds. The air is immediately colder here, the silence more profound. The main building towers over you, its windows like vacant eyes staring out into the twilight. Most are broken, jagged shards glinting faintly. Others are boarded up, but haphazardly, as if the effort was abandoned halfway through. Graffiti mars the lower walls. Tags, crude drawings, the usual declarations of existence from those who pass through. Some pieces are surprisingly artistic, others just angry slashes of spray paint. It's a strange tapestry of defiance against the decay. You circle towards the main entrance, your footsteps crunching on gravel and broken glass. The grand entryway is shadowed, imposing. Double doors, once likely gleaming glass and steel, are now opaque with grime, one hanging slightly ajar, an invitation, or a warning. Historians still argue whether the hospital's abrupt closure in the late 90s was purely financial mismanagement or if darker rumors of malpractice and unexplained incidents played a significant role. Official records cite bankruptcy, but local whispers, well, they paint a far more lurid picture. Tales of experimental treatments gone wrong, of staff pushed to breaking point, of things seen in the dead of night that defied rational explanation. You push the door. It groans open with a sound that echoes unnervingly in the stillness, a long, drawn-out metallic screech. It's louder than you expected, loud enough to make you flinch and glance around, half expecting security guards or perhaps something less conventional. But there's nothing. Just you, the dying light, and the yawning darkness of the hospital lobby waiting beyond. It's funny, isn't it, how we seek out these places? There's a whole subculture, Heikyo explorers, dedicated to documenting these ruins. It's not just about the spooky factor. It's about preserving a moment in time, appreciating the beauty in decay. A quirky tidbit for you: some Heikyo enthusiasts actually leave small offerings, like coins or origami cranes, as a sign of respect to the place and whatever spirits might remain. Maybe you should have brought a crane. Too late now? You take a deep breath, the air tasting stale and dusty, and step across the threshold, leaving the relative safety of the outside world behind. The door sighs shut behind you, not quite latching, but closing enough to make the darkness inside feel absolute. Welcome to Okatsu General. The heavy door settles shut, muffling the already distant city sounds to almost nothing. You're plunged into near total darkness, the only light filtering weakly through the grimy door panes and the jagged holes in the boarded-up windows. It takes a moment for your eyes to adjust, shapes slowly emerging from the gloom like developing photographs. The air is thick with the scent you noticed outside, but amplified: dust, damp plaster, decay, and that faint, coppery tongue. It coats the back of your throat. The silence is immense, pressing in on your eardrums. It's not just quiet. It's an absence of sound, so profound it feels like a physical weight. You can hear the faint buzz in your own ears, the soft rush of blood. It's the kind of silence that makes you acutely aware of your own breathing, your own heartbeat thudding like a drum against your ribs. As your vision sharpens, the lobby resolves into a scene of utter dereliction. Straight ahead is the main reception desk, a long, curved counter of what might have once been polished wood, now scarred, stained, and half hidden under a thick shroud of dust. Behind it, pigeonholes for mail or messages are mostly empty, though a few scraps of paper cling stubbornly within, their contents obscured by grime and shadow. A swivel chair lies on its side behind the counter, one caster broken off, looking like a fallen beetle. To your left and right, what must have been waiting areas are filled with rows of molded plastic chairs, bolted together in sets of 3 or 4. Many are cracked, some overturned. Old, brittle magazines and hospital pamphlets litter the floor between them, their pages fused together by dampness, their covers faded images of smiling families and reassurances of health from a bygone era. Remember those public health campaigns from the 50s and 60s? This hospital lobby was likely designed with that specific post-war optimism in mind, meant to feel welcoming, efficient, modern. The use of large glass panes and relatively open spaces was characteristic of the period's architecture, aiming to bring in light and reduce the institutional gloom often associated with older hospitals. The floor is a treacherous mosaic of cracked linoleum tiles, gritty dust, fallen plaster, and darker patches that could be anything from water stains to— well, let's not dwell on that. Overhead acoustic ceiling tiles hang askew, some missing entirely, revealing a dark cavity filled with pipes and wires that resemble metallic entrails. Water stains bloom across the remaining tiles like grotesque Rorschach blots. You take a tentative step forward, your shoe crunching on unseen debris. The sound echoes alarmingly in the vast space. You freeze, listening again. Nothing, just the settling dust. Maybe the whisper of wind finding its way through a broken window pane high above. Or is it? There's a faint, almost sub-audible susurration, like voices murmuring just beyond the range of hearing. Probably just the building settling, you tell yourself. Buildings this old make noises, it's fine, totally fine. Still, you can't shake the feeling that you've interrupted something, like walking into a room where people were just talking about you. You drift towards the reception desk, drawn by the instinct to find the center of things. Your flashlight beam cuts a swath through the darkness, illuminating motes of dust dancing like tiny fairies in its path. The countertop is thick with grime. You run a hesitant finger across it, leaving a clean streak. Underneath, you can see faded forms, outlines where equipment once sat, perhaps a computer terminal in later years, or just telephones and appointment books. Behind the desk, you spot a tangle of old phone cords, a shattered mug, and a single, forlorn-looking rubber stamp lying on the floor. You pick it up. The rubber is hard and cracked, but you can just make out the hospital's name in reverse. A tangible piece of the past. It's strangely intimate, holding an object someone used daily in their working life here. You pocket it, a weird little souvenir. Probably contains trace amounts of plague, but hey, live dangerously, right? That's joke number 1, folks. You sweep the flashlight beam around. Over by one wall, a large bulletin board still clings precariously, shedding cork fragments. Faded notices are pinned to it, curling at the edges. Staff rotas yellowed with age public health warnings about influenza. Strains long since mutated a fire safety diagram where the "you are here" marker points to a spot now occupied by a pile of rubble. It's a snapshot of interrupted lives, frozen routines. There's a quirky local legend, a fringe tidbit if you will, that claims the reception desk itself is a hotspot. Not for ghosts in the traditional sense, but for echoes, residual replays of moments charged with emotion. People say if you stand here long enough, especially at certain hours, you might hear the phantom ringing of a phone, or the distressed voice of someone receiving bad news imprinted on the very fabric of the place. Sounds like nonsense, of course. But standing here in this oppressive silence, it's easy to let your imagination run wild. The sheer psychological impact of environments like this is fascinating. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of ghost stories associated with old hospitals stems from genuine paranormal activity or is simply a manifestation of our collective anxieties about illness, death, and the unknown amplified by the inherent creepiness of decaying structures. It's the whole nature versus nurture debate, but for spooks. Are the ghosts real, or do we bring them with us, projecting our fears onto the shadows? You move away from the desk, exploring the waiting area on the right. A discarded child's shoe lies near an overturned chair. A single, tiny sneaker caked in dust. That pulls you up short. It's one thing to see decay, another to see such a personal, poignant reminder of the individuals who passed through here. You nudge it gently with your foot, then wish you hadn't. Best not to disturb things. You spot a vending machine against the far wall, its glass front smashed, its metal casing rusted. Empty, of course. Shame, you could murder a lukewarm, questionable can of coffee right now. Joke number 2, check. The lobby feels bigger than it first appeared, stretching back towards darkened corridors and a wide, imposing staircase leading upwards. The air seems colder as you move further from the entrance, the silence deeper. That feeling of being watched intensifies. You sweep your light beam up the staircase, towards the first landing, but the darkness swallows the light quickly. Down one corridor, you can just make out a sign, the lettering faded but legible, Pediatrics. Down another, Radiology. Each opening is a maw, promising deeper exploration and, let's be honest, probably more dust and sadness. It's like a choose-your-own-adventure book, but all the options lead to tetanus. And that, my friends, is joke number 3. You stand indecisively in the center of the lobby, the heart of the hospital's initial welcome, now a cold, dead space. The whispers seem closer now, swirling just out of reach. Time to choose a path. You stand there in the echoing lobby, flashlight beam dancing nervously between the dark corridor openings. Pediatrics, radiology. The morgue is probably downstairs somewhere. Best save that treat for later. Pediatrics, though. There's always something uniquely unsettling about abandoned children's spaces. Toys left behind, tiny beds, drawings taped to walls. It feels like a violation of innocence, somehow more profound than just decay. Curiosity, tinged with a healthy dose of apprehension, wins out. You turn towards the corridor marked Pediatrics, your footsteps unnaturally loud on the cracked linoleum. The corridor stretches before you, narrower than the main lobby suggested. The air grows heavier, stiller as you move away from the relative openness behind you. Your flashlight beam probes the darkness ahead. Doors line both sides, most closed, some slightly ajar, revealing glimpses of empty rooms within. Paint peels from the walls in long strips, like sunburnt skin after a week at the beach without remembering that crocodile dung sunscreen we talked about. Wait, did we talk about that? Maybe that was a different nightmare. Anyway, the paint here seems brighter. Under the grime, you can make out faded pastel colors, pale blues, yellows, pinks, a stark contrast to the institutional beige elsewhere. An attempt to make the place less frightening for its small occupants, now rendered ironic by the decay. You pass a nurse's station tucked into an alcove, smaller than the main one in the lobby. Papers are strewn across its surface, coated in dust. A metal chart holder lies on the floor, empty. Further down, the corridor opens slightly into what must have been the main ward area. You step through the wide doorway, your light sweeping across the room, and stop. The air here feels different. Not just colder, but heavier, imbued with a palpable sense of stillness and something akin to melancholy. It settles on your shoulders like a weighted blanket. The room is large, clearly designed to hold multiple beds. Small metal-framed beds, sized for children, are scattered haphazardly around the space. Some still have thin, stained mattresses on them. Others are just bare springs, rusting quietly. A few have fallen over. Near one wall, a cluster of miniature chairs and a low table sit as if awaiting playtime. One tiny chair is tipped onto its side. Your light catches something on the table, a single wooden building block, painted with a faded letter C for creepy. Probably that's your first chuckle-worthy observation. Mark it down. Faded murals decorate the walls, barely visible beneath layers of grime and water damage. You can just make out cartoon animals, smiling bears, cheerful rabbits, maybe a duck. Their colors muted, their smiles looking strained and grotesque in the gloom. They were meant to be comforting, cheerful distractions. Now they just add to the unsettling atmosphere. It's a reminder of how hospital environments for children changed significantly throughout the 20th century. Early on, they were often stark and intimidating. But by the time this hospital was likely in full swing, there was a growing movement towards making pediatric wards more child-friendly, incorporating playrooms, colorful decor, and psychological support. A historical fact reflecting a shift from merely treating illness to considering the child's emotional well-being. You walk slowly between the beds, careful where you step. The floor is littered with debris, fallen plaster, unidentifiable small objects, scraps of fabric. In one corner, a rocking horse lies on its side, its painted eyes staring blankly at the ceiling, one wooden rocker split. You resist the urge to set it upright. Best not to disturb things, remember? Near another bed, a mobile hangs crookly from a hook in the ceiling, its plastic shapes casting long, distorted shadows as they twist ever so slightly in a draft you can't feel. Or maybe it wasn't a draft. Let's stick with draft. Definitely a draft. You notice the windows are barred. Thick metal bars, painted white but now streaked with rust. Standard practice for pediatric wards, perhaps? Especially if this section housed children with specific conditions or was on a lower floor. Still, it adds a layer of confinement to the already oppressive atmosphere. You run your light over the bars, imagining small faces peering out between them. A quirky, though perhaps unsettling, tidbit often shared among local Heikyo explorers is the claim that handprints sometimes appear on the inside of these dusty window panes. Too small to be adult hands, only to vanish hours later, residual energy. Pareidolia? Or just kids messing with explorers before they arrive? Who knows? It's the kind of detail that sticks with you, though. You move towards a smaller room leading off the main ward. The sign on the door is gone, but inside, you find shelves filled with dusty toys and games. Stuffed animals with missing eyes slump against faded board game boxes. A doll with matted hair and disturbingly realistic eyes stares out from a shelf, seemingly tracking your flashlight beam. Okay, maybe time to back away from the creepy doll. Nothing good ever started with a creepy doll in a place like this. That's your second attempt at humor. Hope it landed better than the rocking horse. There's a profound sadness here that's different from the general decay of the hospital. It's the ghost of childhoods interrupted, of fear and uncertainty experienced by the most vulnerable. Historians still argue whether the long-term psychological effects observed in some adults, who spent significant time hospitalized as children are primarily due to the illness and separation itself, or if the specific environment and practices of older hospitals contributed significantly to later anxieties and traumas. Standing here, it's easy to believe the environment played a heavy role. The silence feels different too, not just empty, but watchful, waiting. You find yourself listening intently, straining to hear something beyond your own footsteps and breathing. A child's laugh, a muffled cry, the soft padding of small feet. You hear nothing, of course, but the expectation of hearing something is almost worse. You check another side room. This one has a single crib in the center. Metal bars higher than the beds. It looks stark and lonely. Something small and dark is nestled in the corner of the mattress. You lean closer, shining your light directly on it. It's a small leather baby shoe, perfectly preserved. Untouched by the decay affecting everything else. Odd. You reach out, then pull your hand back. Nope, not touching it. Haven't we learned anything from horror movies? Don't touch the obviously significant, slightly too well-preserved creepy object. That's 3 jokes, people. I'm practically a comedian lost in a horror show. You back out of the room, pulling the door mostly closed behind you, feeling an irrational need to contain whatever sadness lingered within. Time to leave the children's ward. The weight on your shoulders feels a little heavier now, the silence a little more charged. Onwards, then. Maybe the operating theater will be less emotionally draining. Yeah, right? You retreat from the heavy silence of the pediatric wing, pulling the corridor door mostly shut behind you, though it does little to dispel the lingering chill that seems to have seeped into your clothes. Back in the slightly wider, main corridor branching off the lobby, you pause, recalibrating. The oppressive sadness of the children's ward lingers, a stark contrast to the general decay elsewhere. You shake it off or try to... Time to explore somewhere different, less overtly heart-wrenching perhaps. Though, heading towards anything labeled, surgery probably isn't going to be a walk in the park either. Still, it feels less personal than abandoned cribs and sightless dolls. You consult your mental map, pieced together from the faded signs glimpsed earlier. Radiology was one way, pediatrics the other. There must be another wing, perhaps upstairs or further down this main artery. You shine your flashlight along the main corridor, deeper into the hospital's core. More closed doors, more peeling paint. Ahead, the corridor seems to terminate in a set of double swing doors, the kind you often see leading to restricted areas. Bingo, that looks promisingly surgical. As you approach, the faint, metallic, antiseptic smell you noticed earlier seems to intensify slightly, cutting through the mustiness. It's a phantom scent, perhaps, trapped in the plaster and linoleum, a memory of countless procedures. You push through the double doors. They swing inward with a soft whoosh and a groan of protesting hinges, revealing another corridor, this one tiled halfway up the walls in a sickly green color. Institutional chic, circa 1960, this definitely feels more clinical. Signs here are more specific. Pre-op holding, scrub room, OR1, OR2. You've found the surgical suite. The air is noticeably colder here, the silence, if possible, even more profound. It's the silence of concentration, of high stakes, even decades after the last scalpel fell. You peek into the scrub room first. Stainless steel sinks line one wall, their taps coated in grime, the basins stained. Soap dispensers hang empty, tilted forlornly. On the floor, a single discarded surgical booty lies like a shed snakeskin. This was the threshold, the place where surgeons and nurses performed the ritual cleansing before entering the sterile field, a necessary barrier between the outside world and the vulnerable patient. You can almost hear the rush of water, the methodical scrubbing, the low murmur of pre-surgery conversation. Beyond the scrub room, another set of doors leads into OR1. These are heavier, perhaps lead-lined given the proximity to radiology mentioned earlier. You push one open. It resists slightly, then swings inward, revealing the heart of the matter, the operating theater itself. Your flashlight beam slices through the darkness, illuminating a scene frozen in time, yet ravaged by it. The room is surprisingly large, windowless, dominated by the central operating table. It's a formidable piece of metal furniture, tilted at a slight angle, its surface stained and pitted. Straps hang loosely from its sides. Above it, the iconic surgical lamp cluster hangs like a giant, multi-eyed insect, poised to flood the table with intense, shadowless light. Now, its glass lenses are coated in dust, some cracked, reflecting your beam back in dull, fractured gleams. That lamp technology is a historical marker in itself. The development of effective, shadowless surgical lighting in the early to mid-20th century was a massive leap forward, drastically improving visibility during complex procedures. Before that, surgeons often relied on strategically placed mirrors and natural light, which, as you can imagine, wasn't exactly ideal for delicate work. The floor is tiled, the grout dark with grime. Stainless steel counters run along one wall, littered with unidentifiable debris, broken glass, and rusted metal fragments. Cabinets stand open, empty, their glass doors shattered. And 4-pole lies toppled in a corner, looking like a fallen metal tree. You walk slowly around the central table, your footsteps echoing slightly despite the sound-absorbing tiles on the walls and ceiling, tiles which are now, of course, stained and drooping. The sheer intensity of the procedures that happened right here. Life-saving interventions, desperate measures, moments of triumph, moments of loss. The air feels thick with the residue of adrenaline, fear, and hope. You spot a small, wheeled stool near the head of the table, presumably for the anesthesiologist. Remember the creepy doll from the children's ward? Imagine finding that sitting here. Okay, brain, stop it. Let's not manufacture extra creepiness. There's plenty already baked in. You run your hand over the cold metal of the table. It's unnervingly solid, designed for the sole purpose of supporting a human body during its most vulnerable moments. You try to picture the scene, the masked figures, the focused intensity, the beeping of monitors, the quiet instructions, the clink of instruments. It's a place of ultimate trust and terrifying surrender. Over in one corner, you notice a strange piece of equipment half covered by a fallen ceiling tile. It looks like an older model suction machine, perhaps, or maybe something more specialized. A quirky tidbit: older hospitals, especially in Japan, sometimes housed unique or experimental equipment, prototypes perhaps, or devices adapted for specific research purposes, conducted alongside clinical work. Finding such oddities is a thrill for Haikyuu explorers, sparking speculation about the hospital's history. Was this standard gear or something else? You nudge the tile slightly with your foot, but decide against disturbing it further. Some mysteries are best left undisturbed, especially when they involve suction. You look up towards one wall. High up, there is a glassed-in area, the viewing gallery. A place for students, visiting doctors, or perhaps even anxious family members to observe the proceedings. Now the glass is opaque with grime, reflecting only darkness. Still, you get the distinct feeling of being watched, not just from the shadows in the room, but from that gallery above. Probably just the architecture playing tricks on your mind. Or maybe the ghosts decided balcony seats were better value. It's a common feature in older teaching hospitals, but adds another layer of voyeuristic unease to the scene. The silence presses in again, you strain your ears. Can you hear the faint, rhythmic beep of a phantom heart monitor? The hiss of an oxygen tank? The metallic click of forceps? No, nothing, just the blood rushing in your ears and the occasional distant creak of the building settling around you. Yet the memory of sound feels potent here. Historians still argue whether the high-stress environment of operating theaters contributes to burnout and psychological distress among surgical staff, primarily due to the life and death stakes, or if the specific, often isolating and intense physical environment of the OR itself plays a significant independent role in that stress. Standing here, you can feel the pressure, the weight of responsibility that must have permeated this room. You notice something glinting on the floor near the base of the table. You crouch down, shining your light on it. It's a small, curved piece of metal, smooth, sharp on one edge. A scalpel blade? No, it looks different. Maybe a fragment of a larger instrument. You pick it up carefully. It feels cold, strangely heavy for its size. Holding it, you feel a sudden, intense chill, unrelated to the room's temperature. A wave of dizziness washes over you. Whoops, maybe picking up random. Sharp objects in haunted hospitals isn't peak self-preservation. You quickly drop the metal fragment. It clatters softly on the tiles. Time to go. The operating theater has shared enough of its cold, silent intensity. You back out slowly, pulling the heavy door shut, leaving the table and the multi-eyed lamp to their dusty vigil. You leave the sterile chill of the surgical suite behind, pulling the heavy double doors shut with a soft click that echoes down the tiled corridor. The faint, phantom scent of antiseptic seems to cling to you for a moment before dissolving back into the dominant aroma of dust and decay. Okay, operating theater, checked off the list. Intense, cold, and carrying the distinct psychic weight of life and death moments. You need something different now, something less visceral, more cerebral, perhaps? Where do hospitals keep their secrets? Not the dramatic, surgical kind, but the quiet, everyday kind? The records room, of course. The paper heart of the institution. You continue down the main corridor, away from the surgical wing and the pediatric ward, deeper into the building's administrative bowels. Your flashlight beam dances ahead, illuminating peeling paint, water stains mapping forgotten leaks on the ceiling, and the occasional dark doorway promising unknown rooms. You pass what might have been offices, desks overturned, filing cabinets gaping open and empty, calendars on the wall still showing a month from the late 1990s. Eventually, you spot a likely candidate, a sturdy-looking door, slightly thicker than the others, with a frosted glass panel and faded lettering that might once have read medical records. This feels right. The door is locked, naturally. Why make it easy? You jiggle the handle, but it's solid. You press your shoulder against it, testing its strength. It groans slightly, but holds firm. Typical. Time for some classic urban explorer ingenuity. Or maybe just finding another way in. You scan the surrounding area. Is there an adjoining office? A drop ceiling panel? Ah, wait. Next to the main door is a smaller, less imposing one, possibly an auxiliary entrance or staff access. You try the handle. It turns. With a soft click, the door swings inward into darkness. Sometimes the path of least resistance is just less obvious. Or maybe the ghosts are just really bad at securing secondary entrances. You slip inside, pulling the door quietly shut behind you. The air immediately changes. It's incredibly dry, thick with the scent of aging paper, brittle glue, and dust so fine it seems to hang suspended in the air, sparkling in your flashlight beam. It's the smell of archives, of libraries, but overlaid with the hospital's signature decay. You're in a narrow space, perhaps a small office or reception area for the main record storage. Ahead, through another open doorway, you see it, the records room proper. Rows upon rows of tall, industrial metal shelves stretch away into the gloom, packed tightly with folders, binders, and document boxes. It's a forest of forgotten paperwork. You step into the main room. The scale is impressive and slightly daunting. Miles of shelving, reaching almost to the high ceiling. Some shelves have collapsed, spilling their contents onto the floor in messy piles. Others lean precariously. Binders bulge, folders overflow. Dust lies thick on everything, a gray shroud muffling sound even further. The silence here is different from the OR or the children's ward. It's not heavy or cold, it's expectant. Like thousands of stories are waiting patiently to be rediscovered or perhaps hoping to remain forgotten. Your flashlight beam cuts through the darkness, illuminating call numbers stenciled on the ends of shelves, faded labels on boxes. Cardiology 1985 to 1990, oncology admissions, patient correspondence AC. It's an analog database of human frailty and resilience. You walk down one aisle, running your fingers along the spines of dusty binders. The sheer volume is overwhelming. Think of the lives represented here, distilled into notes, charts, test results. The transition to standardized medical records was a long and complex process, a historical fact often taken for granted now. In the mid-20th century, when this hospital was likely thriving, record-keeping varied hugely between institutions, sometimes even between doctors within the same hospital. Efforts like the problem-oriented medical record, introduced in the late 1960s, aimed to bring structure, what universal adoption took decades. These shelves likely hold a mix of formats, a testament to that evolving history. You reach out and pull a random folder from a shelf. It's heavy, thicker than you expected. The cardboard cover is soft with age and damp. Patient file, Confidential is stamped on the front, the ink faded. You hesitate for a moment. This feels intrusive, more so than exploring the empty rooms. These are real lives, real pain, real diagnoses. But curiosity is a powerful force, and besides, the names and specific details are irrelevant now, lost to time and decay. It's the fragments, the echoes of stories you're seeking. You open the folder carefully, the brittle paper crackling in protest. Inside, pages are filled with handwritten notes, typed reports, charts with spidery lines tracking vital signs. The handwriting is often difficult to decipher, the infamous doctor's scrawl. Dates stamp the corners, 1978, 1983, 1991. You scan the pages, not looking for specifics, but for the shape of a narrative. Patient admitted complaining of. Initial diagnosis suggests treatment plan. Discharged against medical advice, readmitted following. Snippets, fragments, a life condensed into medical jargon and observations. You see notes about family visits, about patient mood swings, about small victories and setbacks. It's strangely compelling, like piecing together a mosaic from scattered tiles. You put the folder back and pull another. This one is thinner, a shorter stay, or perhaps just less complicated. Inside, clipped to a progress report, is a small, pressed flower, unexpected, a gift from a visitor, something the patient kept. It adds a sudden, poignant human touch amidst the clinical data. A quirky tidbit about old archives. Sometimes the most revealing items aren't the official documents, but the ephemera tucked within letters, photos, drawings, pressed flowers like this one. Archivists occasionally find the strangest things used as bookmarks or hidden between pages, offering unintentional glimpses into personal lives. Imagine finding a shopping list or a love note tucked into a serious medical file. It's like finding a joke in a dictionary. You spend time moving through the aisles, dipping into different folders, different eras. Patterns emerge, recurring treatments for common ailments of the time, the gradual appearance of newer diagnostic terms, the changing styles of nursing notes. You find a chart with a child S drawing attached, a wobbly picture of a smiling son. You quickly close that folder, the echo of the pediatric ward still too fresh. You find another with notes detailing a long, slow recovery, ending with a simple, discharged, condition stable. A quiet triumph. The sheer existence of these records raises questions. Historians still argue whether old patient files, with their inherent biases, omissions, and often subjective clinical observations, can truly serve as reliable sources for understanding past medical practices and patient experiences, or if they primarily reflect the perspectives and priorities of the medical establishment of the time. Are we reading the patient's story or the doctor's interpretation of it? It's a complex issue, especially when trying to reconstruct social history from these fragments. You notice a section of shelving that looks different. Metal drawers instead of open shelves? Microfiche, perhaps? Or maybe something more sensitive? One drawer is slightly ajar? You pull it open. Inside are not files, but dozens of small rectangular boxes. X-rays. You slide one out. Holding it up to your flashlight beam, you see the ghostly image of a human skeleton, ribs, spine, skull. It's strangely beautiful and deeply unsettling. An intimate look inside a stranger. You slide it back carefully. That feels even more personal than the paper files. Like reading someone's diary, but written in bone. Okay, maybe X-rays aren't the best bedtime story material. The dust is starting to get to you, coating your throat, making your eyes itch. The weight of all these condensed lives feels heavy in the air. You've seen enough fragments, enough echoes. The revelations here aren't dramatic ghosts, but the quiet, persistent hum of countless human stories, now slowly dissolving back into dust. Time to move on. You make your way back out of the records room, pulling the door shut on the silent forest of files, leaving the stories to their patient, dusty weight. You emerge from the dry, papery confines of the records room, pulling the door shut on its silent accumulation of lives lived and lost on paper. The air in the main corridor feels almost fresh by comparison, though still thick with the general miasma of decay. The dust from the archive seems to follow you, coating your tongue and making you wish for a bottle of water. Note to self, next time exploring a haunted, abandoned hospital, pack refreshments. And maybe a hazmat suit. You backtrack along the corridor, your flashlight beam cutting familiar paths through the gloom. Heading back towards the central hub, the lobby area where this particular journey into darkness began. The vast echoing space of the lobby feels different now, having explored some of its branching limbs. It is less of an unknown void and more like a central chamber connecting different zones of decay and memory. You pause near the main reception desk you investigated earlier. From here, you can see the main staircase winding upwards into blackness, and the entrances to the various wings you've already dipped into. But there's another area, adjacent to the reception, that looks like it served a more active, central function. A large, semicircular station, clearly designed as a nerve center for coordinating ward activities or patient flow on the ground floor. The main nurse's station. You approach it cautiously. Unlike the smaller, more specialized stations tucked away in pediatrics or near surgery, this one is large, imposing, and positioned for maximum visibility. It commands a view of the main entrance, the elevators, and the entrances to several corridors. This was where the real operational tempo of the hospital floor was managed. The desk itself is similar to the reception counter, scarred wood or laminate, thick with dust, but it's cluttered with more functional debris. Metal chart racks stand empty, save for a few forgotten, nameless folders coated in grime. An old, heavy-duty telephone sits askew, its receiver off the hook, dangling by its coiled cord like a hanged man. Trays meant for medication cups or instruments lie scattered, some overturned. A Rolodex, that ancient precursor to digital contact lists, lies open, its cards yellowed and stuck together. You run your flashlight beam over the surfaces. A shattered ceramic mug with a faded cartoon cat on it. A crumpled nurse's cap, stiff with age and dirt, lying near the edge. A pen holder containing a few dried-up ballpoints and, bizarrely, a single, rusty pair of scissors standing upright like a tiny, menacing sculpture. These small, personal items make the absence of the people who use them feel more acute. You can almost picture the controlled chaos, nurses bustling, phones ringing, doctors barking orders, the constant low hum of urgency. Now, only the silence remains, amplifying the sense of desertion. It's here, standing by this central hub, that the feeling really starts to creep in. A distinct, prickling sensation on the back of your neck. The feeling of being watched. Not aggressively, not menacingly, just observed. You slowly turn, sweeping your light around the lobby, into the shadowed corners, up towards the mezzanine railing you hadn't noticed before, which overlooks part of the lobby. Nothing. Just shadows, dust, and decay. But the feeling persists, unwavering. It's as if you've stepped onto a stage and an unseen audience is waiting patiently for the performance to continue. Or perhaps judging your flashlight technique? Hope they appreciate the dramatic sweeps? Nursing stations like this were critical. Before sophisticated digital systems, communication relied heavily on direct observation, handwritten notes, and basic signaling like call light systems. A historical fact for you, early hospital call systems, emerging in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, were often simple mechanical bells or flags, evolving into the electrical light systems common by the mid-20th century. Imagine a panel here, once lit up like a Christmas tree with patient requests, now dark and silent. That panel was the lifeline, the connection between the vulnerable patient in their room and the caregiver at the station. Its silence now feels profound. You lean closer to the desk, peering behind the counter, more debris. A spilled box of paper clips, now rusted into a single clump. A discarded medical textbook, its pages warped by damp. And something else. Tucked away in a corner, almost hidden, is a small framed photograph. You pick it up carefully. It's black and white, faded. A group of nurses, maybe 5 or 6, posing stiffly but smiling in their starched uniforms and caps. They stand in front of what looks like this very hospital entrance, probably decades ago. Their faces are young, hopeful. You wipe some dust from the glass. One nurse in the center seems to look directly at you, her smile perhaps a little forced, her eyes holding a strange intensity. Or maybe it's just the way the grime is settled. You prop the photo back up against the counter wall, feeling like an intruder disturbing a private memory. That feeling of being watched intensifies. It's focused, emanating from somewhere behind you. To the side, it's hard to pinpoint. You stay still, listening intently, the usual creaks and groans of the old building, the faint whisper of wind. But underneath that, or perhaps woven through it, is that faint susurration you heard earlier, like static or distant, indistinct voices? Is it louder near the nurse's station? You strain to hear, it's maddeningly elusive. A quirky tidbit often associated with this specific hospital concerns this main nurse's station. They say the ghost of a particularly dedicated head nurse still does her rounds, unable to leave her post. Reports mention the sound of rustling skirts, the scent of old-fashioned lavender perfume, and most commonly, that intense feeling of being silently observed, especially if you mess with the items on her desk. Oops, maybe putting the photo back was a good idea. Historians still argue whether persistent hauntings reported in specific locations, like this nurse's station, are better explained by environmental factors or by psychological priming and suggestion or, actual ghosts. The debate continues, usually fueled by late-night documentaries and too much pizza. Standing here, though, with the back of your neck prickling and the silence seeming to listen, academic explanations feel rather thin. You decide to test the theory. Very slowly, you reach out towards the dangling telephone receiver. As your fingers get closer, the air feels colder, the sense of presence stronger, more focused. It's like an invisible barrier is pushing back. Okay, maybe antagonizing the potentially spectral head nurse isn't the smartest plan. Let sleeping ghosts lie and all that. Besides, who would you call? Ghostbusters. Pretty sure they don't make house calls to abandoned Tokyo hospitals. You pull your hand back. The intense feeling recedes slightly, back to a general, unnerving observation. It's like playing grandmother's footsteps with a phantom. You take a step back from the desk. Better to just observe, not interact. You sweep your light across the station one last time. The duty roster pinned to a corkboard, names faded beyond recognition. The empty slots where charts should be, the silent phone, the watchful photograph. It's a potent tableau of responsibility and routine frozen at the moment of abandonment, right? Time to move. Standing here feeling like a bug under a microscope isn't exactly conducive to restful sleep later. Where to next? Upstairs? Downstairs? The morgue still beckons from the depths, doesn't it? Or perhaps explore the staff's personal spaces. Decisions. But one thing is for sure, leaving the Nurse S station feels like stepping out of a spotlight. The unseen eyes following you until you turn down another dark corridor, momentarily out of sight. The feeling of being watched fades slightly as you move away from the nurse's station, turning down yet another dimly lit corridor. It's like breaking eye contact with someone intense across a crowded room, a subtle release of pressure. Still, the general unease remains, a constant companion in this decaying labyrinth. You've seen the administration's paper heart, the children's wings, lingering sadness, the operating theater's cold intensity, and felt the spectral scrutiny of the nurse's station. Where does that leave you? Upstairs promises more wards, perhaps staff quarters. But there's an undeniable pull towards the opposite direction, downwards, towards the foundation, the basement, the place where hospitals often tuck away the less presentable aspects of their operations. And inevitably, the final stop for some, the morgue. You backtrack slightly, scanning the walls near the main staircase and the silent elevators. There must be basement access somewhere. There. Tucked away almost under the grand main staircase, half hidden by shadows and a pile of fallen debris, is a heavy metal door. No markings, no window. Just solid, utilitarian steel, painted the same institutional green as the surgical corridor, but faded and streaked with rust, especially near the bottom. It looks final. This has to be it. You approach, your flashlight beam playing over the pitted metal. There's a simple handle, no obvious lock. You grasp it. It's cold, colder than the ambient air, sending a little shiver up your arm that has nothing to do with the actual temperature. You pull, the door resists for a moment, seized by rust or disuse, then groans open with a low metallic screech that echoes upwards into the lobby space. A wave of distinctly different air washes over you, damp, earthy, carrying the faint but unmistakable chemical tang of formaldehyde mixed with mildew and something else, something vaguely organic and unpleasant. It's the smell of deep decay, of places long shut away from light and air. Below, a flight of concrete steps descends into absolute blackness. Your flashlight beam barely penetrates the first few steps before being swallowed whole. This is it. Point of no return. Now, probably just a really dark basement. What's the worst that could happen? Famous last words, right? You start the descent, pulling the heavy door mostly shut behind you to block out the relative openness of the lobby. Each step down feels like a step further away from the world above. The concrete steps are gritty underfoot, littered with small pebbles of crumbling cement. The air grows noticeably colder, damper. Water trickles somewhere nearby, a persistent echoing drip, 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 that seems to measure out the silence. The walls are bare concrete, stained with dark patches of moisture. Your flashlight beam catches cobwebs, thick as shrouds hanging in the corners. It feels ancient down here, primal, like descending into a tomb. At the bottom of the stairs, you find yourself in a low-ceilinged corridor. Pipes, thick, insulated ones and thinner, corroded metal ones, run overhead like the arteries and veins of the building itself. The floor is damp concrete, uneven in places. The chemical smell is stronger here. You follow the corridor, your light bouncing off the damp walls. It twists, turns, passes doorways leading into dark, unidentifiable storage rooms filled with junk, broken furniture, discarded machinery parts, stacks of unreadable, waterlogged boxes. Then you see it. Ahead, another heavy door, this one with a small wire-reinforced glass window set into it, currently opaque with grime. Faded lettering stenciled below the window confirms your destination. Morgue autopsy, lovely. You push the door open. It swings inward silently, surprisingly well-balanced. You step inside. The cold hits you immediately. Not just damp basement cold, but a penetrating chill that seems to emanate from the very walls. This area was clearly refrigerated, or at least designed to be kept significantly cooler. The air is still, heavy, and saturated with that chemical mildew organic cocktail. Your breath misses slightly in your flashlight beam. The room isn't large. Dominating the center of the room is the autopsy table. Stainless steel, gleaming dully under your light, with raised edges and a drainage channel running its length towards a sink at one end. It looks stark, functional, and deeply unnerving. You can almost see the faint outlines, the impressions left by countless bodies that lay here for their final examination. Along one wall stands the main event, the body lockers. A bank of refrigerated compartments stacked 3 high. Heavy stainless steel doors with sturdy latch handles. Most are closed. One, however, near the bottom, hangs slightly ajar, revealing only darkness within. Your eyes are drawn to it. Do you look? Do you dare? Curiosity battles with self-preservation. What if something's still in there? Unlikely after all this time, but the thought alone is enough to make your skin crawl. You decide, perhaps wisely, to leave that particular door unopened. Let sleeping. Well, remember the historical context. Widespread use of refrigerated morgue compartments is actually a relatively recent development, becoming common in the mid to late 20th century. Before that, preservation methods were less effective, relying on cool rooms, ice, or faster turnaround times. This bank of steel doors represents a specific era of dealing with the dead. You sweep your light around the rest of the room. A stainless steel trolley stands against one wall, its surface empty save for a few dark stains. Shelves hold dusty glass jars containing nothing identifiable, thankfully, just residue and grime. A scale hangs from the ceiling in one corner, presumably for weighing organs, charming, on a counter near the autopsy table. A few rusted instruments lie scattered, a pair of forceps, something that might have been a bone saw, a scalpel handle minus its blade. Remnants of the grim work performed here. It's all terribly clinical, yet undeniably morbid. It's like a kitchen, but for the end of life. Hope they didn't mix up the utensils. You notice something odd on the floor near the drain beneath the autopsy table. A small, glittery object. You crouch down, shining your light on it. It's a single earring, a cheap-looking plastic star shape covered in pink glitter. How on earth did that get down here? Dropped by a staff member? A visitor during identification, or perhaps something else? A quirky tidbit from morgue lore involves stories of small, personal items like jewelry or trinkets being found in unexpected places, sometimes attributed to the deceased themselves, as if a final, tiny piece of their personality detached itself. Probably just carelessness, but it adds a layer of strange, poignant mystery to the clinical setting. The silence in the morgue is different again. It's absolute. No wind, no distant city hum, not even the building creaks seem to penetrate here. Just the faint drip of water from somewhere down the corridor outside, and your own breathing, which suddenly sounds incredibly loud. You feel utterly isolated, deep in the belly of the beast. Historians still argue whether the distinct psychological atmosphere reported by people in morgues and autopsy rooms stems purely from the confrontation with mortality and the presence of the dead, or if specific environmental factors like the constant low temperature, the chemical smells, and the unique acoustic properties of these tiled, windowless spaces contribute significantly to the feelings of unease and detachment. Standing here, shivering slightly, it feels like a potent combination of both. You walk slowly around the autopsy table. You run a finger along its cold, steel edge. Stains are visible under the dust, dark, rust-colored patches that your mind immediately interprets as old blood. Though they could just be rust or chemical spills, best not to think too hard about it. You look at the empty lockers, then quickly look away. The open one seems like a dark eye watching you. You feel an overwhelming urge to leave. This place feels saturated, steeped in finality. It's not actively menacing like the nurse's station felt, or sad like the children's ward. It's just heavy, cold, the end of the line. You wouldn't want to get locked in here, that's for sure. Imagine the late fees on returning your body. Time to ascend. Back towards the slightly less creepy decay upstairs. You practically scramble back up the concrete steps, away from the profound chill and finality of the morgue. The heavy steel door booms shut behind you, cutting off the chemical scent and the oppressive silence. You lean against the rough concrete wall at the top of the stairs for a moment, taking deep breaths of the marginally fresher, though still musty, air of the ground floor corridor. Okay, basement level explored, check, morgue survived. Double check, that was intense. The cold down there felt different, deeper, like it settled right into your bones. You need the opposite now, air, space, maybe even a glimpse of the sky, however polluted it might be. Decision made, upwards. You head back towards the grand main staircase in the lobby. It sweeps upwards in a wide curve, disappearing into the shadows of the upper floors. Unlike the grim descent to the basement, this feels almost inviting, a promise of elevation, of escape from the building's oppressive core. You start climbing, your footsteps echoing on the marble steps, which are surprisingly intact compared to the linoleum floors elsewhere, though coated in a thick layer of gritty dust. Handrails, once polished wood or brass, are grimy and loose in places. As you ascend past the first floor landing, you glance down corridors mirroring those below. More wards, more offices, more silent waiting rooms. You don't stop to explore. Your goal is the roof. The higher you climb, the more evidence of decay you see. Water damage is more pronounced on the upper floors, with large sections of plaster fallen from the ceiling, revealing the skeletal lathwork beneath. Windows, where not boarded up, are mostly broken, letting in more ambient light as you ascend, but also more wind, which whistles eerily through the empty hallways. Floor 2, Floor 3. The layout seems largely repetitive. Wards, private rooms, maybe administrative offices. You pass a sign for maternity, but decide against that detour. You've had enough emotional resonance for one night. Thank you very much. Let the phantom babies sleep. Finally, after what feels like an eternity of climbing dusty stairs and passing silent doorways, you reach the top floor. It feels different up here, closer to the elements. The wind sounds louder, rattling window frames, sighing through broken panes. The ceiling is lower in places, suggesting attic spaces or access to the roof above. You follow the main corridor, looking for the final ascent. Usually it's a less grand affair, a narrow service staircase, maybe even just a ladder. Sure enough, at the end of the corridor, you find a simple metal door, smaller than the others, marked roof access. It looks like it hasn't been opened in years, judging by the rust around the edges. You try the handle, locked, of course. Why would the roof door be unlocked in an abandoned hospital? That would just be too convenient for brooding protagonists and urban explorers alike. You push against it, rattling the handle again. Solid, you scan the surrounding area. Is there another way? Sometimes there's an external fire escape, but you haven't seen one. Wait, high on the wall next to the door, there's a metal ladder bolted to the concrete, leading up to a square hatch in the ceiling. Bingo, service access. It looks sturdy enough, probably. You reach up and grasp one of the rungs. Cold metal, covered in dust. You test it with your weight. It holds. Okay. Time for more climbing. The ladder is steep, the rungs narrow and uncomfortable under your hands and feet. You climb slowly, carefully, your flashlight beam pointing upwards towards the hatch. It's a simple metal square, secured by basic latches. As you get closer, you can feel a definite draft coming from around its edges, carrying the scent of rain-washed concrete and city air. You reach the top, balancing precariously, and fumble with the latches. They're stiff with rust, but eventually give way with a protesting screech. You push the hatch upwards. It opens heavily, revealing not darkness, but the deep, bruised purple of the late twilight sky over Tokyo. Freedom. You haul yourself up through the opening, emerging onto the flat expanse of the hospital roof. The wind hits you immediately, a cool, steady breeze that feels incredibly welcome after the stagnant air inside. It whips your hair around your face and tugs at your jacket. You take a deep, cleansing breath. The air isn't exactly fresh. It carries the typical urban blend of traffic fumes, distant cooking smells, and general city grit, but compared to the interior, it's like champagne. You stand there for a moment, just feeling the wind and the vast openness above. The roof is a wide, flat expanse of weathered asphalt or tar paper, cracked and buckled in numerous places. Weeds sprout stubbornly from the cracks, forming miniature, windswept gardens. Various vents, pipes, and pieces of machinery dot the landscape, ventilation units silent and rusting. Access housings for elevator shafts, maybe the remnants of an old cooling tower. Graffiti covers some of the taller structures, more tags and symbols left by previous visitors who made the same climb. In the center, a large, blocky structure probably houses the main stairwell access you couldn't open. A historical fact, rooftop spaces in Japanese urban architecture, especially from the post-war era onwards, often served multiple functions, housing essential building machinery, sometimes incorporating small Shinto shrines for spiritual protection, or even, in some hospitals and department stores, recreational areas or gardens for patients or staff. This roof feels purely functional, though. You walk towards the edge, your footsteps crunching on loose gravel and debris. The view is stunning in a bleak, urban kind of way. Tokyo stretches out before you, a glittering carpet of lights under the darkening sky. Skyscrapers pierce the horizon, neon signs glow in the distance, endless rows of apartment buildings and houses fill the spaces between. Headlights snake along invisible roads. It's a city teeming with life, utterly indifferent to the decaying hulk you're standing on. The contrast is jarring, the vibrant, pulsing city versus the dead silence of the hospital beneath your feet. But it's the wind that captures your attention. It gusts around the rooftop structures, creating strange, shifting sounds. It whistles through vents, hums across wires you hadn't noticed, sighs around corners, and sometimes, just sometimes, carried on that wind, you hear something else, faint, indistinct whispers, snatches of sound that could be voices, just at the edge of perception. Are they coming from the city below, carried upwards on freak currents, or are they closer? Emanating from the hospital itself, finding their way out through vents and broken windows, to be caught and swirled around by the rooftop winds. It's impossible to tell. It's probably just auditory pareidolia, your brain trying to make sense of the random noise of the wind, like seeing faces in clouds but hearing voices in gusts. Still, it's unnerving. A quirky tidbit. Some paranormal investigators favor rooftops for EVP sessions, believing the open air and wind can sometimes carry or amplify residual sounds. Or maybe they just like the view while failing to record ghosts. The vastness of the view, the height, the wind. It should feel liberating after the confinement below. But the whispers, real or imagined, taint the experience. Historians and psychologists still argue whether the common human fear of heights is an innate evolutionary survival mechanism or a learned response based on experience and cultural cues. Standing here, feeling the wind tug at you, hearing those phantom whispers, the argument feels less academic and more pressingly relevant. You step back from the edge slightly. You turn your attention back to the rooftop itself. In one corner, sheltered by a low wall, someone has left behind a small collection of empty sake bottles and cigarette packs. A party spot for bored teenagers or fellow explorers? Or maybe the ghost just really needed to unwind after a long night of haunting. It's another reminder that you aren't the first person to stand here since the hospital closed. The wind picks up again, a stronger gust that moans across the rooftop, carrying that chorus of whispers with it, seemingly louder this time. It swirls around you, cold and insistent. Suddenly, the open space doesn't feel freeing, it feels exposed. Vulnerable, the city lights seem distant, alien. The silence of the hospital below feels like it's seeped up through the concrete, mingling with the wind and the whispers. Time to go back down. The roof offered air, but no peace. You descend the metal ladder carefully, the wind's phantom whispers fading as the heavy roof hatch thuds shut above you, plunging you back into the dusty silence of the top floor corridor. The brief exposure to the open air and the city lights makes the hospital interior feel even more claustrophobic and stagnant. You climb down the remaining flights of stairs, deciding against exploring the upper floors further for now. The maternity ward can keep its secrets. You need something grounded, something tangible after the ethereal whispers on the roof and the bone-deep chill of the morgue. Something. Clinical perhaps, but in a different way. Less about bodies, more about bottles, the pharmacy. Hospitals always have one, usually tucked away somewhere accessible but secure. Ground floor seems likely, maybe near the main entrance or outpatient clinics, for easy dispensing. You make your way back down the grand staircase, your flashlight beam playing over the dusty marble, the echoes of your footsteps seeming louder now, as if the building itself is listening. Back in the main lobby, you pause near the imposing nurse's station, half expecting that prickling sensation of being watched to return, but it doesn't. Maybe the spectral head nurse is on her break. Or perhaps she just doesn't care which department you rifle through next, as long as you don't mess with her phone. You scan the remaining corridor entrances leading off the lobby. One sign, partially obscured by peeling paint and grime, looks promising. The first few letters might spell out pharmacy or dispensary. You head towards it. This corridor feels less traveled than the others, the dust thicker, the debris underfoot less disturbed. After a short walk, you arrive at a set of double doors, one of which has frosted glass panels, though one panel is completely shattered, leaving a jagged hole. Through the grime on the remaining glass, you can just make out shelves lined with bottles inside. This is it. You push the door open. It scrapes reluctantly across the littered floor, opening just wide enough for you to slip through. You step inside, and a unique blend of scents hits you, sharper than the general dust and decay, yet faded, ancient. There's a dry, powdery smell like crushed chalk. A faint, lingering chemical sweetness, perhaps from spilled syrups. A hint of bitter herbs. And underlying it all, the ubiquitous scent of old paper and damp cardboard. It's the ghost of a million prescriptions, the olfactory residue of healing and palliation. The pharmacy is smaller than you expected, a compact space crammed with floor-to-ceiling shelves, most still laden with their contents. A long counter runs along one side, separating the main storage and dispensing area from what was likely a small waiting space near the door. Behind the counter, more shelves are packed with bottles, boxes, and jars of varying shapes and sizes. Dust lies thick on everything, undisturbed for years, softening edges and muting colors. Your flashlight beam cuts through the gloom, reflecting off glass and plastic surfaces. You move behind the counter, into the heart of the pharmacy. It's like stepping into a time capsule of outdated medicine. Rows upon rows of amber glass bottles, clear glass vials, colorful cardboard boxes, small metal tins. Labels, handwritten or typed on old machines, are yellowed, peeling, some barely legible. Tincture of benzoin, potassium permanganate, elixir turpin hydrate with codeine aspirin compound tablets. Names that sound archaic, remedies largely superseded by modern pharmaceuticals. It's a museum of therapeutic history left to crumble. You pick up a small, cork-stoppered bottle. The label is handwritten in elegant but faded script. Laudanum. Opium tincture. A common, potent painkiller and cure-all in previous eras, now heavily restricted. Holding the bottle, you feel a connection to a different time, when such powerful substances were dispensed with far less oversight. A historical fact, the regulation of pharmaceuticals evolved dramatically throughout the 20th century. In the early days, many potent and addictive substances were available with minimal control, but events like the thalidomide tragedy in the 1960s led to much stricter testing, labeling, and dispensing laws, globally changing the face of pharmacies like this one forever. You place the laudanum bottle back carefully. Exploring further, you find shelves dedicated to ointments in metal tubes, powders in cardboard drums, large jars of cotton wool and gauze now yellowed and brittle. There's a section that seems to be for compounding, a small scale, coated in white powder residue, glass mortar and pestles, spatulas, empty gelatine capsules. Here, pharmacists would have mixed bespoke preparations based on doctors' specific instructions. It feels like an alchemist's workshop abandoned mid-experiment. Maybe they were trying to turn lead into gold, or just figure out how to make cough syrup taste less disgusting. Your light falls on a shelf filled with particularly strange-looking bottles containing murky liquids and unidentifiable solids. The labels are even harder to read, some seeming to list ingredients like extract of serpentis or pulvis acis sapaya. A quirky tidbit, older pharmacopoeias, especially those drawing from traditional Campo medicine in Japan or even Western traditions, included ingredients that seem bizarre or downright alarming today, animal parts, rare minerals, potent herbs with poorly understood effects. Finding these remnants offers a glimpse into a time when medicine was as much art and tradition as science. You wonder what extract of serpentis was supposed to cure, snake-induced boredom? Probably not. You find a box labeled sample medications, do not dispense. Inside, nestled in compartmentalized cardboard, are small vials and blister packs from pharmaceutical reps of the past. Familiar company names alongside ones long since merged or disappeared. It's a snapshot of medical marketing from decades ago. Imagine the drug reps back then, maybe less slick than today, leaving samples of the latest miracle drug. Wonder if they had free pens back then too? Probably quill pens, knowing this place. The sheer variety is fascinating, but also slightly disturbing. How effective were these remedies? How safe? Historians still argue whether the perceived benefits of many older, pre-evidence-based medicine era drugs were primarily due to the placebo effect and the psychological impact of receiving any treatment, or if some genuinely possessed unrecognized therapeutic properties that were lost with the rise of standardized synthetic pharmaceuticals. Were these shelves filled with potent cures, dangerous poisons, or just expensive placebos in fancy bottles? You move towards the dispensing window, a small opening in the counter where patients would have received their medications. A small bell sits on the counter nearby, coated in dust. You resist the urge to ring it. Who or what might answer? On the floor beneath the window lies a scattering of small white pills, spilled during the final days, or dropped by a ghostly patient still waiting for their refill. You nudge one with the toe of your boot. It rolls slightly, leaving a clean track in the dust. Better leave them be. Taking random pills off the floor of an abandoned hospital pharmacy seems like a Darwin Award waiting to happen. The air feels heavy with the ghosts of ailments past, the faint chemical tang a constant reminder of the substances meant to combat them. It's a quiet place, this pharmacy, but filled with the silent potential of its forgotten stock. Potions and pills, elixirs and ointments, waiting patiently on dusty shelves for a purpose they will never again fulfill. You give the room one last sweep with your flashlight, the beam catching the glint of countless glass bottles, before backing out. and pulling the scraping door mostly shut, leaving the remedies to their eternal rest. You leave the pharmacy, the faint, powdery scent of old pills and chemicals seeming to follow you for a few steps before dissolving back into the corridor's general mustiness. That was interesting. A quiet corner filled with the ghosts of old cures and questionable remedies. Remember that laudanum? Potent stuff. Makes you wonder what other potent secrets this place holds. You've been underground to the morgue, explored the ground floor's main areas, lobby, pediatrics, surgery, pharmacy, records, and felt the spectral surveillance of the nurse's station. You've even braved the windy, whispering rooftop. What's left? The upper floors still beckon, largely unexplored beyond your quick ascent to the roof access. There was that sign for maternity you skipped, but also, surely a hospital this size must have had a dedicated wing for psychiatric care. Often these were situated somewhat apart, perhaps on an upper floor or in a slightly separate wing for privacy, security, or maybe just because mental health was historically treated as something distinct from general physical ailments. You head back towards the main staircase, the grand, dusty sweep of marble leading upwards once more. Time to investigate those higher levels more thoroughly. You climb again, past the first floor, past the second. The higher you go, the more dilapidated the surroundings become. More water damage, more collapsed ceilings, more debris underfoot. It's as if the decay is worse closer to the roof, where the elements have had easier access over the years. On the third floor landing, you pause. The layout seems similar to below, corridors branching off. But one sign down a particularly dark hallway catches your eye. The lettering is faded, partially obscured by a long streak of rust-colored water stain, but you can just make out, Ward 7, Neuropsychiatry, bingo. This must be it. The corridor leading to Ward 7 feels different immediately. The air is heavier, more stagnant, if possible. The silence here is deeper, less broken by the faint sounds of wind you could hear elsewhere. It feels insulated, oppressive. The paint on the walls is a drab, institutional color, maybe a faded beige or gray that seems to absorb your flashlight beam rather than reflect it. Doors line the corridor, but they look heavier, more solid than the ward doors elsewhere. Some have small, reinforced windows set into them, high up, allowing observation without easy interaction. Others have what looks like old slide slots, perhaps for passing medication or food without opening the door fully. This was clearly a place designed for containment as much as care. You push open the first door you come to. It swings inward heavily, revealing a small room barely larger than a closet. It's completely bare, except for padding. Thick, stained, padded material covers the walls, the floor, even the inside of the door itself. A seclusion room, designed to prevent patients from harming themselves or others. The air inside is thick with the smell of old sweat, stale chemicals, and despair. It's intensely claustrophobic. You quickly back out, pulling the door shut, feeling a wave of empathetic distress. Imagine being locked in there, alone with your thoughts. Shudder. You continue down the corridor, peering into other rooms. Some are standard patient rooms, small and bare, with remnants of sturdy, bolted-down furniture, a bed frame, maybe a simple metal desk or shelf. Windows, where present, are covered with thick metal mesh or bars, casting grid-like shadows in your flashlight beam. Other rooms are clearly offices or therapy rooms, containing broken desks, overturned chairs, and scattered, unreadable papers. One room seems to have been a common area, a larger space with a few dilapidated armchairs facing a blank wall where a television might once have sat. A single torn cushion lies on the floor, leaking faded stuffing. It's a scene of profound neglect and isolation. The atmosphere throughout the wing is palpably heavy. It has not the sharp intensity of the operating room or the poignant sadness of the Children's ward. It's a dull, pressing weight, a feeling of accumulated psychic distress. You feel tired, drained, just walking through here. It's as if the very walls have absorbed decades of anxiety, confusion, and suffering. A historical fact. The design of psychiatric facilities underwent significant changes throughout the 20th century. The imposing, asylum-style institutions of the past gradually gave way to models emphasizing smaller wards, more natural light and therapeutic environments, reflecting evolving theories about mental health care. This wing, with its heavy doors and seclusion rooms, likely represents an intermediate stage, or perhaps a unit for more acute cases within a general hospital setting. You reach a nurse's station, similar in layout to the others, but somehow grimmer. The counter is scarred and stained. Behind it, shelves hold a few empty binders. A metal cabinet stands open, revealing empty shelves. On the counter, you spot something unusual, a set of heavy leather straps with metal buckles lying coiled like dormant snakes. Restraints. A stark reminder of less enlightened treatment methods, or perhaps necessary measures in extreme circumstances. Seeing them lying there so casually is chilling. Makes you glad you brought your own snacks and didn't rely on their hospitality. In one patient room, you notice drawings taped to the wall, unlike the cheerful murals downstairs. These are abstract, chaotic scribbles in dark crayon or distorted faces with hollow eyes. Remnants of art therapy or just expressions of inner turmoil. It's impossible to know, but they add another layer of unease to the heavy atmosphere. A quirky tidbit often whispered about this particular hospital psych ward involves rumors of a specific room, room 307, supposedly where patients reported experiencing shared, specific delusions or hallucinations unrelated to their individual diagnoses. Staff allegedly dismissed it, but the rumor persisted among patients. Probably just coincidence or suggestion, but it's the kind of story that sticks to a place like this. You glance at the room numbers as you pass. You don't see a 307, maybe that's for the best. The silence in this wing feels loud. It presses against your eardrums, punctuated only by the sound of your own breathing and the crunch of debris underfoot. You find yourself listening intently, straining for any sound, a footstep, a whisper, a muffled cry, nothing, just a heavy, oppressive quiet. It makes the feeling of psychic weight almost unbearable. Historians and psychiatrists still argue whether the challenging outcomes, sometimes seen in long-term psychiatric hospitalization, were primarily due to the severity of the underlying illnesses, the limitations of available treatments at the time, or if the institutional environment itself, the lack of stimulation, the social isolation, the inherent power dynamics, actively contributed to patient deterioration or chronicity. Standing in this heavy silence, it's easy to believe the environment itself could be profoundly damaging. You pass a door marked electroconvulsive therapy. It's locked tight, probably for the best. Don't want to accidentally stumble into a live socket left over from the 70s, though. A quick jolt might be just the thing to wake you up from this nightmare. Kidding, mostly. You decide you've felt enough of the psych ward's intensity. The air is too thick, the silence too loud, the weight too heavy. It's a profoundly unsettling place, steeped in a different kind of pain than the rest of the hospital. It's the residue of minds in turmoil, of battles fought within the confines of the skull, amplified by the isolation and decay. You turn back, heading towards the main corridor, eager to leave Ward 7 and its oppressive atmosphere behind. You feel like you need to decontaminate your brain after that. Maybe find a nice, cheerful storage closet full of bedpans to lighten the mood. You retreat from the heavy, oppressive atmosphere of Ward 7, pulling the corridor door shut with a sense of profound relief. The air in the main third-floor hallway feels instantly lighter, cleaner, though still thick with the standard-issue dust and decay. That psych ward was something else. A heavy, draining experience that clings to you like damp clothes. You need a palate cleanser. Something less focused on the patients and their suffering, perhaps. What about the people who worked here? The doctors, nurses, technicians, administrators, they didn't just appear at the start of their shifts and vanish afterwards. Many likely spent huge chunks of their lives within these walls, not just working, but perhaps living here too. Where would the staff quarters be? Often in older hospitals, particularly those built mid-century like this one seems to be, accommodation for nurses and resident doctors was provided on site. It might be a separate building, but just as likely, it could be a dedicated wing or floor within the main complex. Given you haven't seen an obvious separate structure, exploring another section of these upper floors seems the best bet. You bypass the maternity sign earlier, and you've done the psych ward. Time to explore further along this third floor, or perhaps head up to the fourth if the stairs continue. You find another staircase, narrower and more utilitarian than the grand main one, likely intended for staff use. It continues upwards. You climb, the concrete steps echoing your progress. The fourth floor feels even more dilapidated than the third. More exposed lathwork, more missing ceiling tiles, wider patches of damp. But here the signage changes subtly. Less clinical designations, more domestic ones. Faded signs point towards lounges, residences, Wing B, dining hall. This looks promising. You follow the sign towards residences, Wing B. The corridor here feels different again. The floor might have once been carpeted. You can see darker, rectangular shapes suggesting where rugs lay and remnants of adhesive. The doors are different too, simpler wooden doors, more like apartment entrances, many with old-fashioned number plates still attached. Some doors are missing entirely, others hang open at odd angles. You peer into the first open doorway. It's a small room, clearly a bedroom or bedsit. A narrow metal bed frame stands against one wall, mattress long gone. A simple wooden wardrobe gapes open, empty except for a single wire hanger swinging gently in the draft. A small desk is pushed under the window, its surface warped and stained. On the floor, pages torn from a magazine or newspaper lie scattered, their images faded. It's basic, functional, almost monastic. This was likely accommodation for a junior nurse or trainee. You can imagine someone living here, snatching a few hours of sleep between demanding shifts, pinning a photo to the wall, trying to make this small, institutional box feel like home. You move to the next room. Similar layout, but this one contains more personal debris. A pair of worn slippers tucked under the bed frame, a cracked mug on the desk. Taped to the inside of the wardrobe door is a faded, curling photograph. A group of young people, not in uniform, perhaps friends or family from back home. It's these small, personal touches that make exploring staff quarters feel so different. It's not just about the function of the hospital, it's about the lives interwoven with it. A historical fact. For much of the 20th century, particularly for nursing staff, living in hospital-provided accommodation was not just common, it was often mandatory. Strict rules often governed behavior within these residences, controlling everything from visiting hours to curfews, reflecting a paternalistic attitude towards nursing staff. You continue down the corridor, glancing into other rooms. Some are completely empty, stripped bare. Others contain more fragments of lives left behind. A shelf of paperback novels, their covers lurid and dated. A collection of empty perfume bottles on a makeshift dressing table. In one room, a suitcase lies open on the floor, as if someone was interrupted mid-packing. It contains only dust and a few desiccated mothballs. Creepy. Did they leave in a hurry? Or just forget the suitcase of mothballs? Let's hope it's the latter. You find what must have been a communal lounge area. A few broken armchairs, springs bursting through the upholstery. A table with a missing leg. An old, boxy television set lies face down on the floor, its screen shattered. Remnants of posters on the wall, maybe public health notices, or perhaps something more recreational, now faded beyond recognition. You can picture off-duty staff gathering here, smoking, complaining about shifts, sharing gossip, a brief respite from the intensity of the wards below. Further down, you find a door marked Doctor's Residence, Apt 4B. This door is heavier and locked. Peering through the keyhole, you see only darkness. Doctors likely had slightly better, perhaps more private, accommodation, maybe small apartments rather than single rooms. Their secrets remain locked away. Probably just overdue library books and questionable taste in ties, if stereotypes hold true. In another junior staff room, you find a small, locked wooden box on the desk shelf. It's lightweight. You shake it gently. Something rattles inside, letters, jewelry. A secret stash of really good hospital-grade biscuits? This taps into that classic urban exploration trope, the quirky tidbit of finding locked boxes or hidden diaries in abandoned places, promising untold secrets. Of course, they usually contain nothing more exciting than old buttons or expired coupons. You leave the box unopened. Some minor mysteries are best left unsolved, And besides, you don't have a hairpin or lock-picking skills worthy of a B-movie spy. The silence here feels different too. Less charged than the wards, less sterile than the OR, less final than the morgue. It's a domestic silence, filled with the ghosts of everyday routines, sleeping, reading, chatting, waiting for the next shift bell, but it's also profoundly melancholic. These aren't just abandoned workplaces. They're abandoned homes, however temporary or basic they might have been. You feel like an intruder rifling through the remnants of private lives. Historians still argue whether the personal artifacts left behind in abandoned spaces, like these, offer a genuinely valuable window into the lives and subjectivities of past individuals, or if they are merely random decontextualized fragments onto which we project our own assumptions and narratives. Can this faded photograph or that shelf of books truly tell us anything meaningful about the person who lived here? Or are we just creating stories to fill the silence? It's a pertinent question when you're standing in someone's abandoned bedroom. You find a shared bathroom area. Rows of sinks, mirrors cracked and clouded, shower stalls with missing tiles and rusted fittings, a single forlorn bar of soap, petrified in its dish. It smells damp and vaguely of old plumbing. Nothing much to see here, unless you have a particular interest in historical grout decay. Time to move on before you start critiquing the tile work. Exploring the staff quarters has added another layer to your understanding of this place. It wasn't just a machine for processing illness. It was a community, a place where people lived, worked, formed relationships, experienced boredom and stress, and left behind fragments of their ordinary lives when the doors finally closed. You leave the residential wing, heading back towards the staff staircase, the ghosts of forgotten routines and personal moments swirling in the dusty air behind you. You leave the melancholic silence of the staff quarters behind, descending the narrow service stairs back towards the lower floors. The ghosts of ordinary lives, the worn slippers, the faded photos, the abandoned novels, feel less threatening but perhaps more poignant than the dramatic echoes in the surgical suite or the psych ward. It's a reminder that this place wasn't just about crises. It was also about the mundane, the everyday routines that framed those moments of intensity. After the oppressive weight of Ward 7 and the intimate sadness of the staff rooms, you crave something different yet again. A space designed not for healing bodies or minds, nor for housing staff, but for something else: solace, contemplation, a connection to something beyond the sterile reality of medicine. Many hospitals, especially older ones, had a chapel. Where would they put such a place? Likely somewhere quiet, away from the main hustle and bustle. Ground floor seems plausible, perhaps tucked away in a less trafficked wing, or maybe even near the entrance but shielded from the direct flow. You reach the ground floor again, the familiar echoing lobby stretching out before you. You've explored most corridors leading directly off it. Perhaps it was accessed differently? You circle the lobby slowly, your flashlight beam probing corners you might have missed earlier. Behind the main reception desk, near where you found the records room corridor, there's another, narrower hallway you hadn't fully investigated. It looks like it leads towards the back of the building. You head down this corridor. It's shorter than the others, ending abruptly at a pair of tall wooden double doors. These doors are different from the utilitarian metal or standard wooden doors elsewhere. They are darker wood, possibly oak, with simple carved panels. They look distinguished, more formal. There's no sign, no label, but they have the distinct look of an entrance to a place set apart. Could this be it? You push one of the doors gently. It swings inward smoothly, almost silently, on well-oiled hinges, surprisingly well-maintained compared to everything else. Or perhaps just less used, less abused by time and neglect. You step through the doorway and stop, letting the door whisper shut behind you. The change in atmosphere is immediate and profound. You're standing at the back of a small chapel. Rows of simple wooden pews, dark with age and dust, stretch towards a raised area at the front. Above the pews, the ceiling arches slightly, higher than in the corridors, giving the space a sense of modest grandeur. Light filters in through tall, narrow windows along both side walls, not garish stained glass, but simple, frosted panes, thick with grime, that diffuse the exterior gloom into a soft, gray luminescence. It's enough to see by without your flashlight, Though you keep it on, its beam cutting through the dusty air. The silence here is unlike anything else you've experienced in the hospital. It's not the heavy, oppressive silence of the psych ward, nor the cold, final silence of the morgue, nor the expectant silence of the records room. It's a deep, resonant stillness, calm, peaceful, almost. The dust motes dancing in the filtered light seem to move more slowly here. The air feels still, undisturbed by the drafts that snake through other parts of the building. It smells faintly of old wood, decaying hymn books, and perhaps a trace of long-faded incense or candle wax. You walk slowly down the central aisle between the pews, your footsteps muffled by a threadbare runner carpet that might once have been deep red or blue, now faded to a nondescript brown. You run your hand along the back of a pew. Smooth, cool wood beneath the layer of dust. You can imagine patients, visitors, staff members sitting here, seeking comfort, offering prayers, or just finding a moment of quiet refuge from the anxieties and stresses of the hospital environment. A historical fact: the integration of dedicated chapels and pastoral care services became increasingly common in Western hospitals through the 19th and 20th centuries, reflecting a holistic view of healing that addressed spiritual as well as physical needs. However, the specific denomination or style often depended heavily on the hospital's origins, whether it was state-run, secular, or founded by a specific religious order. At the front, on the raised platform, stands a simple wooden altar or table. It's bare, stripped of any religious paraphernalia, no cross, no candlesticks, no holy books. Behind it on the wall is a faint rectangular outline where something larger, perhaps a painting or a significant religious symbol, once hung. Its absence feels deliberate, adding to the chapel's strangely neutral sense of peace. Was it removed when the hospital closed, or earlier, perhaps reflecting a shift towards a more multi-faith or secular approach? Or did someone just really need a slightly used religious artifact for their living room? To one side of the altar stands a small, dusty lectern. A single book lies open upon it, its pages yellowed and brittle, fused together by time and damp. You lean closer, trying to read the text. It seems to be a book of psalms or hymns, the print faded, the language perhaps slightly archaic. You resist the urge to touch it, fearing the pages would crumble into dust. Let the silent songs remain unsung. You look up at the windows again. The frosted glass prevents any view of the outside world, enhancing the sense of seclusion. The soft, gray light they admit is calming, lacking the harshness of your flashlight or the gloom of the windowless rooms. It feels like a space designed for introspection, regardless of specific belief. You sit down in one of lounging pews. Might as well, you've paid the admission price of potential tetanus. The wood groans slightly under your weight. You sit there for a moment, just breathing in the stillness. It's a profound contrast to the rest of the hospital. Here, the decay feels less like violation and more like gentle surrender. The silence feels less like absence and more like presence, a quiet, waiting presence. Of course, even chapels have their strange stories. A quirky tidbit sometimes attached to hospital chapels involves tales of lingering prayers, the idea that strong emotions or fervent prayers offered in the space can leave a kind of psychic residue, occasionally felt by sensitive individuals as unexplained feelings of peace, sadness, or even specific wordless messages. Fringe belief, naturally, but sitting here in this palpable stillness, it's easy to imagine the accumulated weight of hope, fear, grief, and gratitude that must have soaked into these walls over the decades. You wonder if any specific prayers were answered, or if there's a spectral complaints department for the unanswered ones. The very role of such spaces invites debate. Scholars in fields ranging from theology to psychology still argue whether the provision of religious or spiritual spaces and services within secular healthcare settings genuinely contributes to measurable patient well-being and recovery through identifiable mechanisms, or if its value is more subjective, culturally specific, and ultimately beyond empirical verification. Does faith heal? Or does it simply help people cope with what cannot be healed? Sitting in this quiet, ambiguous space, the question hangs unanswered in the still air. You notice something tucked away in the corner near the front, a small harmonium or pump organ. Its wooden case warped, some keys missing like broken teeth. You gently press one of the remaining keys. Instead of sound, there's only a soft, wheezing sigh, like the instrument is breathing its last. A silent organ for a silent chapel seems fitting. Maybe it only plays phantom hymns now, audible only to the dust motes. The peace here is seductive. You could almost imagine just staying, sitting here in the quiet gray light, letting the stillness seep into you. It feels safe, insulated from the creeping dread elsewhere. But it's the peace of resignation, perhaps, the quiet of a place that has accepted its abandonment. It's time to go. You stand up, the pew groaning again in protest. You give the silent altar, the empty space on the wall, the whispering organ one last look, then turn and walk back down the aisle, leaving the chapel to its profound, undisturbed stillness. Pushing the heavy door open, you step back into the familiar gloom of the hospital corridor, the resonant silence of the sanctuary fading behind you like a half-remembered dream. The heavy wooden door of the chapel whispers shut behind you, and the profound stillness is immediately replaced by the familiar, musty silence of the main hospital corridors. The peace of the sanctuary fades quickly, like a pleasant dream dissolving upon waking, leaving you back in the gritty reality of Okatsu General's decay. You've explored its depths, its heights, its places of healing, suffering, administration, and rest. You've felt its chills, heard its whispers, encountered its lingering sadness and intensity. You feel like you've grasped the essence of this particular sleeping giant. But Tokyo, this vast, sprawling metropolis, is notorious for hiding forgotten corners, layers of history built upon each other. What if Okatsu isn't the only silent giant in this neighborhood? You find yourself back near the main entrance, the grimy double doors still slightly ajar as you left them hours ago. The first hints of pre-dawn light are beginning to filter through the dirt and cracks, painting the dust-filled lobby air in faint shades of gray and blue. It's tempting to just slip out back into the waking city, leaving the ghosts to their slumber. But a restless curiosity the urban explorer's itch still lingers. You remember reading online forum whispers, fragmented mentions when researching Okatsu, about another abandoned clinic or small hospital nearby, supposedly shut down even earlier, rumored to be in a far worse state. Could it be true? Or just Heikyo legend? Decision made. You're here, you're already covered in decades of dust and questionable microbes. What's one more ruin? You slip out through the main doors, the screech of the hinges sounding like a final farewell from Okatsu. Outside, the air is cool and damp, carrying the scent of imminent dawn and wet pavement. The streetlights are off now, the sky slowly brightening in the east. You consult the offline map on your phone, recalling the vague directions mentioned online. A smaller facility, maybe a tuberculosis sanatorium or a private clinic, supposedly located just a few blocks deeper into this forgotten fringe district. You start walking, leaving Okatsu looming silently behind you. The streets here are narrow, cracked, weeds pushing through the asphalt. The buildings are a mix of older, Showa-era wooden houses, small shuttered shops, and nondescript low-rise apartment blocks. It feels like a neighborhood time forgot. After about 10 minutes of walking through the quiet, sleeping streets, you see it. Tucked away at the end of a dead-end alley, almost completely obscured by overgrown trees and vines, stands another building. Smaller than Okatsu, perhaps only 3 or 4 stories, but radiating an aura of profound neglect that makes Okatsu seem almost well-maintained by comparison. This is the Fuyuki Clinic, if the fragmented online rumors were correct, and it looks wrecked, seriously wrecked. Part of the roof has visibly collapsed inwards. Walls are stained black, suggesting a fire at some point. Windows are not just broken, they're gaping holes, frames long gone. Vegetation isn't just reclaiming the edges, it's engulfing the structure. Thick ivy covers entire walls, tree branches push through window openings, roots buckle the very foundations. This place looks less like an abandoned building and more like a jungle ruin that happens to have some concrete bones. If Okatsu was sleeping, Fuyuki Clinic is returning to the earth. The fence surrounding it has long since rusted and collapsed in several places. You step through a gap, pushing aside thick, wet foliage. The ground underfoot is soft, mulchy, more forest floor than hospital grounds. The air smells of damp earth, rotting wood, stagnant water, and mold, a much more organic decay than Okatsu's dusty, chemical-tinged atmosphere. You approach the main entrance, or what's left of it. The doors are gone, leaving a dark, gaping maw. Above it, a rusted metal sign hangs precariously, bearing faded characters that might once have spelled the clinic's name. You hesitate. This feels significantly more dangerous than Okatsu. Structural integrity looks questionable at best. Still, you've come this far, flashlight on, you step inside. The interior is chaos. Water drips steadily from the compromised roof, pooling on the floor. Plaster hasn't just peeled. It's fallen in huge chunks, littering the floor along with broken roof tiles, sodden insulation, and unidentifiable debris. Metal fixtures, light fittings, pipes are heavily rusted, some hanging precariously. Wooden structures, door frames, remnants of furniture are warped, swollen, or actively rotting. A historical fact: many buildings erected quickly during certain periods, like post-war reconstruction booms or rapid suburban expansion, sometimes use materials or techniques that haven't aged well, leading to faster deterioration when abandoned, especially when combined with factors like fire or significant water ingress. This clinic looks like a prime example. You move cautiously through what might have been a small lobby or waiting area. A few rusted metal chairs lie scattered, half buried in debris. The reception desk is a collapsed pile of rotting wood. You shine your light down a corridor. The floor is partially flooded, the water dark and stagnant. You can see rooms branching off, but they look utterly devastated. Furniture overturned and broken, walls crumbling, ceilings sagging. It's hard to even imagine this place functioning as a medical facility. It feels more like the aftermath of a localized apocalypse. Maybe the previous ghost from Okatsu came here for an after-party and really trashed the place. You decide against wading through the flooded corridor. Exploring the ground floor further seems risky. Is there access upstairs? You spot a staircase, partially collapsed. The lower steps are missing entirely, the upper section tilting at a dangerous angle. Definitely not safe. This place is far gone. A quirky tidbit among Heikyo enthusiasts is the concept of the difficulty rating of abandoned sites. Some are easy walk-ins like Okatsu, while others, like Fuyuki Clinic seems to be, require climbing, navigating structural collapse, or dealing with serious hazards like flooding or unstable floors. This one would definitely rate as expert level, or possibly bring a hard hat and a priest. You stand there for a moment, taking in the sheer level of decay. It's fascinating in a terrifying way. The relentless power of nature and time, stripping away human artifice, reclaiming materials. Historians and sociologists still argue whether the fascination with ruins and decay is a morbid preoccupation with decline, a romantic yearning for a lost past, or a confrontation with impermanence that helps us appreciate the present. Looking at this crumbling clinic, it feels like all three at once. You notice something amidst the debris near your feet. A small ceramic doll's head, detached from its body, staring up with one painted eye, the other socket empty. Its porcelain skin is cracked and stained by mold. It's profoundly creepy, even more so than the intact doll back in Okatsu's pediatric ward. You quickly step back. Okay, that's your cue. This place is too far gone, too dangerous, and frankly, way too creepy with decapitated dolls lying around. Some ruins are best left to the rats, the mold, and the encroaching jungle. Time to admit defeat before a ceiling collapses or you fall into a pool of toxic goo. Or worse, the doll's head winks at you. You carefully pick your way back through the debris, out of the gaping entrance, and push back through the wet foliage onto the alleyway, leaving the Fuyuki Clinic to continue its slow, silent return to the earth. You step out of the narrow, overgrown alleyway, leaving the Fuyuki Clinic to its moldering solitude and its creepy doll-head sentinels. The contrast between the intense, organic decay of that place and the slightly more structured, dusty decline of Okatsu General, just a few blocks away, is striking. Fuyuki felt like an archaeological dig into the very recent past, already half swallowed by the earth. Okatsu, while derelict, still felt like a building, albeit a dying one. This brief detour has given you a new appreciation for the different ways abandonment manifests, and particularly the relentless, quiet power of nature. The pre-dawn light is stronger now, painting the eastern sky in soft shades of pink and gray. The air is cool and still holds the dampness from the night. As you walk back towards Okatsu, you find yourself noticing the greenery with a new eye. It's not just random weeds anymore. It's an invasion. A slow, silent, inexorable siege. You saw it in extremis back at Fuyuki, the ivy strangling walls, the tree branches probing through windows like skeletal fingers, the roots buckling concrete. Nature doesn't just reclaim, it consumes. Even here, on the relatively clearer streets leading back to Okatsu, you see the signs. Tough, tenacious weeds forcing their way through minuscule cracks in the pavement, their roots patiently exerting incredible pressure. Moss colonizing the damp, shaded sides of walls, creating patches of vibrant green velvet against the drab concrete. Small saplings taking root in gutters clogged with years of leaf litter, their tiny leaves unfurling defiantly towards the sky. It's a constant, subtle battle waged millimeter by millimeter, season after season, and nature always, eventually, wins. You reach the perimeter of Okatsu General again. From the outside, its brutalist concrete form still dominates. But now you focus on the ways nature is softening its edges, probing its weaknesses. Remember the crumbled section of the wall you climbed over? It wasn't just vandalism or neglect. Persistent roots likely played a role, widening cracks, pushing stones apart. Ivy, though less rampant than at Fuyuki, climbs determinedly up sections of the wall, its tendrils finding purchase in mortar joints and window ledges. Birds flit in and out of broken windows, nesting somewhere within the cavernous interior, their droppings adding nutrients to localized patches, encouraging more growth. It's an ecosystem establishing itself, a pioneer community moving into newly available territory. You walk around the base of the building, your flashlight beam, scanning the foundations. Thick clumps of resilient grasses sprout where the walls meet the earth. Fungi cluster in damp corners, strange, pale shapes emerging from the decaying detritus, nature's recyclers, breaking down the complex organic matter left behind. You spot a surprisingly large patch of brightly colored mushrooms near a leaky drainpipe. Probably best not to try identifying them for breakfast. Unless your idea of a good time involves multicolored vomit and existential conversations with the aforementioned fungi. The sheer tenacity of life is remarkable. A historical fact for you, Japan has a long history of observing and documenting ecological succession, partly due to its experience with natural disasters like volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and tsunamis, which create blank slates for nature to recolonize. Studies of places like Mount Yuge after eruptions or coastal areas after tsunamis have provided valuable insights into how pioneer species arrive, establish, and gradually pave the way for more complex ecosystems. Abandoned urban areas like this hospital offer a different kind of blank slate, an artificial landscape being slowly terraformed back towards something wilder. You find yourself drawn back towards the main entrance, pushing the groaning door open again, stepping back inside Okatsu's dusty embrace. The light filtering in from the entrance and broken windows is stronger now, illuminating the lobby in a way you haven't seen before. The dust motes dance in visible shafts of light. And you see it more clearly now. The subtle green tinge on damp patches of wall is algae or moss. Tiny ferns sprout from cracks in the windowsills. Even indoors, where light permits, life is finding a foothold. You wander back towards the records room corridor. Remember the dry, papery smell? Even there, silverfish and other decomposers are likely at work, slowly turning those archives back into basic components. You peek into a ground floor room you skipped earlier. It might have been a waiting room or a small office. A large potted plant, long dead, stands in the corner, its dried, skeletal branches reaching outwards. But around its base, in the pot's old soil, new life has sprung, small, opportunistic weeds, thriving on the remnants of the former occupant. It's like a tiny, contained example of the whole process. A quirky tidbit: certain plant species are known as calcicoles, meaning they thrive in lime-rich conditions. The mortar and plaster in old buildings like this often provide exactly that, which is why you sometimes see specific types of ferns, mosses, or wildflowers colonizing ruins more readily than the surrounding soil. They're literally eating the building, slowly. The sounds are different too, now that you're attuned to it. It's not just the wind or the building settling. It's the rustle of unseen things in the walls, mice, perhaps, or insects. The cooing of pigeons echoing from somewhere high up, the drip of water feeding patches of moss, the faint buzz of flies drawn to decay. It's the soundscape of decomposition and colonization. It makes the silence feel less empty, more occupied, just not by the former human occupants. Maybe the ghosts are annoyed they have to share the space with pigeons now? Bet they leave spectral droppings everywhere. Ecologists still debate whether these novel urban ecosystems, formed in the ruins of human structures and often containing a mix of native and non-native species, should be viewed primarily as degraded environments or as unique, resilient habitats in their own right possessing ecological value despite their unnatural origins. Are these weeds and fungi invaders destroying a human artifact, or are they pioneers creating a new kind of urban wilderness? The perspective changes the value judgment entirely. You find yourself thinking about the sheer power you're witnessing. Not the sudden violence of collapse, but the slow, patient, irresistible force of growth and decay working in tandem. Plants cracking concrete, water dissolving structures, fungi digesting materials, bacteria breaking down everything else. It's a quiet, relentless dismantling. Humans build, nature reclaims. It's the ultimate cycle. And standing here, inside this monument to human endeavor being slowly unmade by moss and microbes, you feel a strange sense of awe. It's humbling. Makes you wonder if your own houseplants are secretly plotting a similar takeover. Keep an eye on that suspiciously vigorous fern in the bathroom. The growing dawn light illuminates more and more detail, the intricate patterns of mold on a damp ceiling, the delicate structure of a spider web strung across a doorway, the vibrant green of moss against decaying wood. It's a different kind of beauty than the intended architecture, but beautiful nonetheless. The beauty of resilience, of persistence, of life finding a way, even in the heart of decay. You've seen the human stories haunting this place, felt the echoes of past lives. Now you're seeing the next chapter being written, not by ghosts, but by spores, seeds, and roots. The dawn light is strengthening now, filling the dusty lobby of Okatsu General with a pale, revealing glow. The shafts of light illuminate the decay with stark clarity, the peeling paint, the cracked tiles, the thick layers of grime. You've seen the hospital's secrets, felt its lingering emotions, witnessed the slow creep of nature's reclamation. From the chilling depths of the morgue to the whispering winds on the rooftop. From the poignant sadness of the children's ward to the sterile intensity of the operating theater, you've walked through the echoes of countless lives and deaths. You've even braved the advanced decay and creepy doll head of the nearby Fuyuki Clinic, confirming that Okatsu, while haunted and decaying, still retains a semblance of its former structure, unlike its neighbor returning rapidly to the earth. You stand near the main entrance, the same entrance you hesitantly pushed open what feels like a lifetime ago, back when dusk was falling. Now the rising sun signals an end to this nocturnal exploration. It's time to leave. Time to return to the world of the living, the city that's slowly stirring outside these silent walls. You take one last look around the lobby, the imposing reception desk, the vacant waiting areas, the dark mouths of corridors leading to places you now know intimately. You feel a strange mix of relief, exhaustion, and something else. A sense of connection, understanding? Or maybe just profound relief that you didn't actually encounter Nurse Lavender or get locked in the morgue. You turn towards the doors. Pushing them open feels different this time. Less like entering a forbidden realm, more like stepping out of a deep, immersive dream. The hinges still groan, a final, mournful sigh from the building. You step across the threshold out onto the cracked pavement of the hospital grounds. The morning air feels cool and surprisingly clean after the stale, dust-laden atmosphere inside. Birdsong, tentative at first, then more confident, fills the air, a stark contrast to the profound silence or unsettling whispers within. The sounds of the city are closer now, the distant hum of traffic, the rumble of an early train. Life is resuming its rhythm. You walk towards the crumbled section of the wall, your escape route. Glancing back, Okatsu General looks different in the dawnlight, less menacing, perhaps more tragic. A vast concrete shell filled with memories and decay, slowly being consumed by time and nature. It stands silent, watching you go, its empty windows like eyes reflecting the brightening sky. You think about the stories held within, the patients, the staff, the triumphs, the failures, the quiet moments in the chapel, the frantic energy of the OR, the lonely vigil in the staff quarters. It's a microcosm of human experience, abandoned but not entirely erased. A historical fact, the preservation or demolition of such large, abandoned structures often becomes a complex issue involving heritage concerns, safety risks, redevelopment pressures, and the high cost of either maintaining or safely dismantling them. Okatsu's fate likely hangs in this bureaucratic limbo, allowing it to continue its slow decay. You hoist yourself back over the broken wall, landing on the pavement outside the hospital grounds. You brush dust and bits of crumbling mortar from your clothes. You feel grimy, tired, and distinctly out of place as the first few early commuters start to appear on the nearby streets heading towards bus stops or train stations, glancing curiously at this disheveled figure emerging from the vicinity of the abandoned hospital. Probably best not to make eye contact. Just act natural. As natural as one can after spending a night exploring haunted ruins. Maybe whistle a cheerful tune, or just try not to look like you've seen a ghost or several. You start walking away, back towards the more populated areas, leaving Okatsu and its silent companion Fuyuki behind. The experience lingers, a residue in your mind, the chill of the morgue, the weight of the psych ward, the scent of the pharmacy, the whispers on the wind. It makes you wonder about the countless other forgotten places tucked away in the city's folds. What stories do they hold? What ghosts linger there? A quirky tidbit. Some urban explorers develop intricate personal maps of cities, marking not just abandoned sites but specific entry points, hazards, and even rumored hotspots of paranormal activity, creating a hidden geography known only to initiates. It's like a secret layer overlaid on the official city map. The nature of memory and place is fascinating. Psychologists and neuroscientists still debate how environments become imbued with emotional resonance, whether it's purely associative memory triggered by sensory cues, or if there's a deeper, perhaps even physiological, way that intense experiences leave an imprint on a location perceived by subsequent visitors. Why did the nurse's station feel watchful? Why did the chapel feel peaceful? Science offers partial explanations involving infrasound, expectation, and sensory triggers, but the subjective experience often feels more than that. The debate continues, fueled by experiences like yours. You reach a busier street. Taxis pass, buses rumble by, shops are beginning to open. The transition is jarring. Just minutes ago, you were immersed in silence and decay. Now you're back in the flow of everyday life. The hospital already feels distant, unreal. Did you imagine it all? The dust on your clothes and the lingering chill in your bones say otherwise. You need coffee, lots of coffee. And maybe a shower, a very, very long shower. And perhaps avoid watching any horror movies involving hospitals for a while. Just a suggestion. The sun is fully above the horizon now, casting long shadows, painting the city in the warm, ordinary light of a new day. The intensity of the night begins to recede, replaced by a profound weariness and the comforting normality of the waking world. The sharp edges of fear and unease soften, blurring into a strange, dreamlike memory. Okatsu General, with its silent corridors and lingering echoes, feels like a world away now, a place visited in a different state of consciousness. The whispers on the wind seem distant, the chill of the morgue less penetrating. You find a small cafe that's just opening, the smell of coffee and baking bread achingly familiar and welcome. Sitting down, watching the city come alive through the window, the hospital's grip loosens further. It becomes just a story, a collection of unsettling images and sensations experienced in the deep quiet of the night. The weight lifts from your shoulders, replaced by the simple, physical need for rest and warmth. The silence you carry now is not the hospital's heavy presence, but the quiet contemplation of having journeyed through somewhere forgotten and returned. The ghosts, real or imagined, remain behind, confined to their decaying domain, while you rejoin the stream of life, carrying only the faintest echo of their silent world. The city embraces you with its noise and bustle, a reassuring counterpoint to the stillness you're leaving behind. Time to let the shadows recede, to let the quiet hum of the ordinary world lull you back towards peace. The journey is over. You are safe. You are back,